What is happening, everybody? It's time for the final MLB Live Before Lock of the weekday, bringing you guys into the weekend as you're watching. Do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Myself and Eric, we're going to be breaking down the slate, which does include another Coors Field game, not the Dodgers at Coors Field, so it is a little bit different than what we've been dealing with because we've had, I don't know, every other slate this week. I think I've had like 40 to 60% Dodger stacks, and it was a good run for Coors Field. Coors doesn't always go that way, but it's been good to us so far this week. We'll see what we're going to be end up doing with it for tonight's slate. As you guys are watching, just do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, I've got a big surprise for you.
I don't want to even talk about it. I didn't talk about it when we came into the Zoom room. I'm really not enthusiastic about this. I mean, why?
So I just think I should get new hats for all the shows all the time.
It's a bad bit.
Have you ever heard of Indiana Jones?
Yes, I have an Indiana Jones hat.
Indiana Jones, for the people at home who might not be familiar with Indiana Jones, it's a movie. Han Solo kills a bunch of mummies, something along those lines. So what I did is sorry, go ahead.
I just said I think that's how it goes. Continue.
Yes. All right. So what I did is I went online and I ordered a replica hat of the exact same one that Han Solo wore in Indiana Jones. Are you ready?
Yeah.
There it is. This is the exact replica of the hat that Han Solo wore when he killed all the mummies in Indiana Jones. What do you think? I know people were upset about the cowboy hat the other day, so we've got something new going on here. And I'm thinking I should just continually get new hats all the time.
It's the same hat.
I know. It's the exact same hat that Han Solo wore in Indiana Jones.
No, This is my job on a day-to-day basis, is dealing with you. And
yes.
You're wearing a Superman shirt, which makes it even worse. And you're my boss, which makes it even worse. But also, why? Why are you doing this to the people? Why are you all reacting? It's not the same hat at all. Andre B, do not enable him. Do not enable.
Yeah. No, but we got good stuff there. We've got Chris Williams left this super chat. He said, I think it's dope, but it's just me. He also gifted out some YouTube memberships. So as always, Chris, thanks for that. He gifted out 2 different sets of 5 YouTube memberships. As always, Chris, thank you for supporting the channel. He also likes the hat. And then also, you're looking at a lot of people seem to be supportive in the YouTube channel. They're recognizing that this is a totally different and very cool hat.
Somehow worse than I was anticipating it because it's the same damn hat. Somehow
says, I love the new hat, Greg. Yeah, lots of people saying they like the new hat. Sunflower, Greg is Eric's boss. Yeah, dude, I've been Eric's boss for a while here. Been Eric's boss.
He calls me daddy, though.
What's wrong with that? It's a little bit of work bonding.
Yeah, that's what it is.
There's a lot of ways to bond. Tip to tip, skin to skin, compliments. Yeah. Lots of ways to do it.
It's lovely. It's lovely. I love New Jersey this time of year.
Good bonding. MLB DFS conversation.
There it is.
You guys have questions for us, hit us up in the Discord channel. Throw your thoughts and comments into the YouTube chat as well. We're going to start breaking down the pitching here. And this is a really interesting pitching slate, Eric. The main reason it is so interesting to me, there are a lot of viable options. There is not a single pitcher on the entire slate projected for north of 30% ownership on DraftKings. But what we do have is a lot of pitchers that are projected for like mid to high 20% ownership. So let's group all of the pitchers together that are 8,600 or above. The reason I want to do that is because every single pitcher, with the exception of one, is all this price range contains all of the pitchers that have double-digit ownership going to them. Chris Sale is 28% owned. Dylan Cease is 28% owned. Grayson Rodriguez is the only pitcher in single-digit ownership that's $8,600 or more. He is $9,600 projected for 8% ownership. George Kirby, 24% owned. Nathan Eovaldi is 14% owned. Chris Paddock, one of your many nemesises that pitch for the Minnesota Twins. It's kind of funny. I was thinking about this earlier when I was looking at ownership. you are a Minnesota Twins fan. The team's been pretty good, and I think you dislike every single pitcher in the rotation. And then Carlos
Absolutely.
Rodon is 28.5% on. He's the most popular pitcher on the slate, tied with Chris Sale, but not that they're that all more popular than Dylan Cease, just slight percentage points ahead. Who to you is the best chalk option of all these pay ups?
It's weird because it's a pitcher that I dislike a lot from a real life, well, not even from real life, from a fantasy perspective. And then I just think that he's overrated from last season's numbers. But George Kirby is the guy that I'm getting the most of. I don't know if you know this, Greg, but he went to your alma mater, Elon. George Kirby is not somebody that when I immediately think of strikeout rate jumps to the top of my board, but we have a couple of different things going on with him. He's got a 167 expected ISO against lefties, 167 expected ISO against righties. It's identical to both sides of the plate. With this configuration of the Miami lineup, I just don't think that there's any way that Miami can really affect him. And I feel like I'm almost like free rolling with the strikeouts. The guy is really, really good at avoiding the walks. That's the superpower that George Kirby has. That doesn't always play well from a fantasy perspective, but it plays pretty well from a fantasy perspective when Jazz Chisholm is back. And he's got a 24% K rate leading off. Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, Jake Berger, Tim Anderson, all north of 24% strikeout rates against right-handed pitching in a great ballpark to be pitching. I think George Kirby is the best option, mainly because he's got a 3.3 implied total going up against him. The next highest amongst all these guys is Dylan Cease, and Dylan Cease, his recent stuff freaks the living shit out of me taking on Milwaukee with the top 5 WRC plus against righties. So I think George Kirby is safe, and he provides upside at 9,400.
I find it just so hard to differentiate some of these guys. Like I have right around 30% ownership of Rodon, Sale, Cease.
But who do you have the most of?
Carlos Rodon, and I'm like, do I really want to be playing close to the field, considering that he's going up against the Atlanta Braves? But yeah, I kind of am right there around the field. But if I'm just using my personal judgment and trying to say like, all right, I've got a bunch of these pitchers that are relatively comparably similarly owned, I'm agreeing with you. I'm going to go with Dylan Cease here. And, you know, the matchup is not quite ideal, obviously, but Cease has been a really solid strikeout pitch over the course of the year. And something else to consider, too, if we are trying to weigh the matchups, all of these guys that are picking up the most ownership are in really difficult matchups. Carlos Rodon is pitching against the Braves. Chris Sale is pitching on the road against the Yankees. Cease is against the Brewers. So even though Cease's matchup is difficult, it's not like it's considerably more difficult than the matchups of the other two guys that are just under 30% owned. It's probably even the easiest matchup of the other two.
Yeah, it is. And Kirby, again, Kirby's the one I have the most of. Dylan Cease is the guy I have the second most of. Chris Sale third. I am pretty flat, but George Kirby is still, just because of the safety, I feel like going up against Miami, he has by far the best matchup, by far the one that I feel the most confident that things would really have to go south on George Kirby to give up 4 earned runs in a spot like this. And I think he's still going to get a lot of strikeout upside considering this lineup. 24% K rate for Kirby. You get 5 of those top 6 with north of 24% strikeout rates against righties. Feel pretty good about it. But then Dylan Cease is the guy the second most of, and it just freaks me out. This has more to do with the ballpark and the talent for Dylan Cease. Petco, we know that it's not going to exactly be ideal for hitting, despite what we saw pretty good offense yesterday, but both of those pitchers are just absolute gas cans. That Bezer fellow, holy cow. But I'm very much on the side of Dylan Cease being the second best. And then, yeah, Atlanta, I love Chris Sale. Very, very difficult matchup. 3.94 implied run total, depending on where you're looking there. Chris Paddock, I don't like, but 8,700, he's pulling the least amount of ownership. I will certainly be around the field on him, but pulling 40% on Kirby, 30-ish, it depends. I've had a couple of different runs. We'll see where it all pans out with Dylan Cease. And then I'm under on Sale and I'm under on Rodon, but not by like a considerable margin.
Oh, by the way, shout out to Melissa Harvey in the chat. She's saying that she said, thanks everyone for the birthday wishes.
Got to get you the Pick6 card.
That it's Melissa's birthday. Melissa, happy birthday. And I'm sure that she is overjoyed to know that I'm not wearing a cowboy hat today. Melissa, happy birthday. Happy birthday. One of the OG members around here, and always around watching shows, and in Discord chat we see her as well as YouTube. Happy birthday, Melissa.
Happy birthday, Melissa. Also, you were looking for a Pick6 card. I would throw it in here now. I know that they're our sponsor and that we'll talk about them at like the midway point, but I want you to get this in because I'm bummed out it's not on the main slate today, and it's what I am jamming over on Pick6. I've got more Pick6 exposure today than I've had just about any other time throughout this MLB season. And it has a lot to do with Arizona Philly, which is not on the main slate. It starts in 29 minutes, and the main slate for Pick6 starts in 29 minutes. So you want to jump in there now, sign up using promo code Lindy or Lindy6 or, anything that we have. I'm sure producer Jordan Klein can throw it into chat here, but it is a phenomenal game environment. 92 degrees here at first pitch, wind blowing out, humidity up in Philly. Just looks miserable, as if Philly wasn't an already miserable place to live. Now you've got this to deal with. I love less than 4.5 strikeouts thrown for Jordan Montgomery. It's sitting at the top of Odd Shopper today. And then I'm combining it around with total bases from both sides, fantasy points from both sides. Love Corbin Carroll, 6.5 fantasy points, one of my favorite plays on the slate. 6.5 for Kyle Schwarber, one of my favorites on the slate. In fact, there are 3 leadoff hitters with 6.5 fantasy points. I understand that there's a difference between mean and median projections when it comes to MLB DFS, but you also have Jarren Duran there for the Boston Red Sox leading off against a lefty and Andrew Abbott. We'll get to that spot for sure, but those are 3 leadoff hitters in unbelievable game environments. 2 of them have stolen base upside in Carroll and Duran. Schwarber hits the ball many, many moons far, even against lefties. 6.5 fantasy points for those 3 leadoff hitters. Fire that up and let's post some screenshots afterwards. Happy birthday, Melissa.
There we go. And today's sponsor is DraftKings Pick6. If you guys already have a DraftKings account, super easy to find. They're not available in every state, like not available in Jersey. I wish I could play. I just can't because it's not available in New Jersey yet. But if you're in a state where it's available, you could also find it on the DraftKings website. So go check it out and watch Eric's content every day. He puts content up on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel, the Stochastic YouTube channel. Really, really good way for you to start building your Pick6 cards out there. By the way, we also just got the lineup for the Washington Nationals. Most notably, Keibert Ruiz not in the lineup today, Eric. So that is something that I'm going to have to rerun my lineups for. I assume yourself as well?
Yeah. Also, from a betting perspective, that's going to be something I want to pay attention to. I think one of the most profitable things I've had, just kind of on the side, not something I throw into Discord every single day because I like to back test a lot of my theories and how I'm going about stuff before I start posting about it. Because if I'm not profitable at it betting myself, I'm not going to start posting it into the Discord. But Keibert Ruiz has one of the slowest pop-up times. Drew Millis, is that who ended up catching instead?
Yes.
Okay, because Keibert Ruiz is one of the better targets for stolen bases that I've had in my model for the last couple of weeks. And he has a slow exchange time. A quicker exchange time, but he has slow average pop-up, and he only averages 78.8 miles per hour throwing to second base on pickoff attempts. That is the slowest in Major League Baseball. Drew Millis, closer to 85 miles per hour, so this definitely affects, I think, how Colorado might potentially run against him. So this is definitely something that downgrades Colorado a little bit for me. I'm going to have to trim some fantasy points off of some of those hitters.
Yeah, that's really good information. Honestly, that's something I've never looked into before, but it's good context. It's good information to have there. Angels lineup just came out as well. Please no late scratches today. Can you give us a Friday night MLB? Like not even lying. Inevitable. There's been more late scratches in baseball this year than there was in basketball for really like the entire season. It's been ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. Also, I've been able to do this now because as NBA was starting to wane down, I was like, there's certain betting avenues, and I'm looking for edges wherever I can at sports books and trying to give the best information possible on shows. And that's something that I've kind of been tracking on the side, mainly because it's something I've never paid that much attention to. But I've got a buddy who makes a lot of money betting only stolen base props in baseball. And I think it's a very interesting process that he goes through to do it. He taught me a little bit about it. I'm going to continue to refine my process there, but from Pick'em, where I do a lot of my stuff, it's never really all that applicable, but it is something that I think is very, very interesting from a DFS perspective.
All right, let's get back to talking about tonight's slate over on the DK side of things. And as far as these pay-up options go, are there any ones that you do not like relative to their ownership on the high end of the range?
Not really. I think ownership is pretty out of any slate I can recall that we've been doing shows the last couple of weeks. Doesn't this feel pretty efficient outside of potentially Carlos Rodon? Like And I understand why Rodon is pulling ownership. We've seen improved stuff out of him. I know you've seen it. I know I've seen it. The velocity may be ticking up a little bit. The fastball, he's a very fastball heavy guy. He will be very reliant upon that. But is Atlanta freaky even without Ronald Acuna in this lineup? Yeah, they're going to eventually start destroying baseballs. They have a 108 WRC plus against lefties as it is. So it's not like they're nothing sitting there. Just a 22.4% K rate. I say just meaning that I understand that that's in the top half of baseball, but it's nothing exorbitant. And they carry a 164 ISO against. It is a tough spot for Carlos Rodon, but I still think that he's got enough juice at 23.1% K rate, been trending up. The barrels are going to start coming down. I would think 9.6% barrel percentage on the season. For a guy who throws a 55% of the time, fastball, and the velocity is now almost neutral, around 95 miles per hour now on the season. I think this is a guy that's just fine, and he's the cheapest of all these arms.
Yeah, I currently have. I'm gonna have to rerun my lineups for the Nationals new lineup. Well, not new lineup, but different than expected lineup. I have 26% of Carlos Rodon. So, like I said before, I'm not all that different from the field. I thought I was going to be lower, but ultimately that didn't end up being the case. One thing that is really tricky about Carlos Rodon's numbers is he started the season pitching very poorly and getting very, very lucky. And now I was waiting. I'm like, he's going to regress at some point. He's going to regress. The turning point was that start he had against your Minnesota Twins, where he was like nearly perfect. He has been a way better pitcher since then. The funny thing is, if you just look at like his base stats, like things like ERA, you'd be like, no, he's been good the whole year and nothing's changed. But what's actually happened is earlier in the year, he was getting really lucky and not pitching all that well. And then as of late, he's been pitching really, really well and getting like a little bit unlucky. So his numbers just kind of balanced out. Here's numbers for June. 27% K rate. That's awesome. 4% walk rate. Also awesome. 2.42 FIP. So you've got for the entire year, his underlying numbers are as good as they've ever been. His walk rate is way down. His strikeout rate is up. So I've just kind of bought into Carlos Rodon at this point. But like you're saying, I do think the pitcher ownership, it's pretty efficient by the field. If we're getting back to just like our gut feelings of these players who are pretty similar from before, I'm going to say that Dylan Cease, like we talked about before, probably the one who I feel the most comfortable with, which does bring up a really, really interesting talking point. Clintwood83 asked us, who are the top two pitchers for cash games or for a single entry? So if we're talking about cash games, Eric, boy, it is.
I think it's pretty clear cut.
There's not like
you're playing George Kirby in cash. You're playing George Kirby in cash.
I'm going to say George Kirby and Dylan Cease.
Those are the exact two. I think it's pretty clear cut in cash that those are the two you want to play. I actually think there's a case to be made for playing DJ Hers in cash today. Although, I mean, this is a much
side for Coors Field.
I understand 6,300. I'm just saying that like if you're going to go just pure bats and you want to play some Washington on the other side and you want to go that direction, but yeah, it's probably too much risk. I would say Cease, Kirby, but Kirby for me it's weird to say again. I'm not a George Kirby stan by any means, but I think he's your first click for cash. And on FanDuel, I don't think I'd be looking at doing anything but play George Kirby.
Got some super chats that have rolled in. First, it is the news god who says, salute to the hat. Not Greg, not Eric, just the hat. News god. Appreciate you. Melissa Harvey says, goodbye, fake cowboy hat. Happy birthday to me. Yep, new hat specifically for you, Melissa, and your birthday. Happy birthday to you once again. And then Andre B says, is a full fade of Coors insane? Across one lineup, no. If you're playing a bunch of lineups and you have no exposure to Coors Field, yeah, I think you've gone wrong somewhere. I'm not getting as much of Coors Field today as I was on, say, those slates where we had the Dodgers those other days. But still, I have right around, let me pull this back up. Yeah, I've got right around 20% exposure to each the Rockies and the Nationals.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty flat on Coors as well. I'm not going to be full fading it by any means. I am lower on the Colorado side. I am a little above on the Washington side.
We'll talk about it more when we get to stacks, but the reason that I ended up getting to more of the Rockies than I otherwise thought I was going to is because a guy you just mentioned is pretty popular on the low end. Do you have any other pay up options you want to talk about on the slate?
Nope. Grayson Rodriguez, I get it. The ownership is there already, but I think there's some cheap pitchers, 7-8K, that I can make a better case for than trying to force Grayson Rodriguez against Houston.
So, and yeah, and also Yordan Alvarez back for the Astros. Homered in his first plate appearance back yesterday.
He's good.
So, if we talk about the rest of the pitchers on the slate, there's only one pitcher that is double-digit ownership that is priced below $8,600. And that is the man you had just mentioned before, DJ Hertz. He is projected now for, just refreshed ownership, 18% ownership he's projected for at $6,300. Every single other pitcher that has any ownership, it's a pay-up option today. If anybody's saving salary, they're all going to DJ Hertz. He crushed in his first start. He ended up putting up, how many fantasy points was
13 strikeouts, I know. Off the top of my head, I don't recall. I just remember watching a lot of it because my buddy's like, why is this guy named DJ Hertz throwing absolute insane fire against fucking Atlanta? And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, now I didn't even know who he was. Wasn't even on my fantasy radar. For year-long stuff, no idea. And now all of a sudden, well, we're going to have a conversation about him.
And I just realized that I think I said his first start and his last start, not his first
Third.
start.
He's had 3 starts. Yeah.
So his last start, he ended up putting up 43 DraftKings points. 43. We had DJ Hertz went out, pitched against the Miami Marlins, 6 shutout innings, 1 hit allowed, 13 strikeouts. So 6 nearly perfect innings with 13 strikeouts. Today presents a different challenge. Not a more difficult offense against the Colorado Rockies, but he is going to be pitching in Coors Field. But considering how poor the other cheap options are looking, DJ Hertz is showing up a little bit in my line, but he's the only pitcher that I have like a meaningful amount of that is, oh no, actually there's one other contrarian option I like, but he's the only one the field is getting to in DJ Hertz. What are you going to be doing with him and then the Rockies on the other side? Because I think we kind of have to talk about them together.
Yeah, DJ Hertz, I said I'm a little bit under on the Rockies because I am going to side a little bit on the top 2 value percentage. He's got the highest of anybody there. I will be playing some Trevor Rogers against Seattle. Is that the same cheap guy, 5,400 for us? Yeah, we're both playing Trevor Rogers. I had a feeling.
I'm kind of confused by the Rogers ownership. It's just, if you are telling me Trevor Rogers versus DJ Hertz, like if you remember, Trevor Rogers is one of the best pitching prospects in baseball just a few years ago. Now, I know that it's kind of gone a little wayward since then, but I don't really think that DJ Hertz being $900 more expensive and pitching in Coors Field should have more than double the ownership of Trevor Rogers pitching at home against the Seattle Mariners, pitcher-friendly park in Miami. So I'm a little bit underweight to DJ Hertz, and then Trevor Rogers is my preferred value option on the slate for a fraction of the ownership.
I'm 100% with you. Again, Trevor Rogers is going to be the guy that I'm playing more of in the bottom than just about anybody there. I have some Andrew Abbott too. We'll get to that conversation, but Trevor Rogers for sure. I don't understand it either. I keep looking through everything. Crawford against a southpaw there sitting with a 12.9% K rate. Outside of him, you still have more. 24% K rate. Rodriguez, 27% K rate, 23% for Garver, 27% for Raleigh, so on and so forth. Everybody else outside of Crawford is a phenomenal strikeout matchup for Trevor Rogers. So the ballpark hopefully can suppress some of those issues. And we get a nice start for 5,400 down there with Mr. Trevor Rogers. I think that that's kind of the main guy to highlight star center. I thought he'd be more popular than what he is. I prefer him over Paddock. And I look at the ballpark situations and matchups, pretty comparable. So it's going to be more of the Trevor Rogers side. I will have some Paddock, but more at the field on him. And then TJ Hertz. I think that we all know that he's not going to be a guy who's going to mow down 13 more than likely here, but Colorado, it's 80 degrees, wind slightly blowing out. It's good hitting environment. It's freaky. The guy's at 35% K rate now through 3 starts. I don't expect that to continue either. He is a fastball primary guy. And this is what freaks me out about DJ Hertz is that he has no velocity on that fastball, 93 miles per hour, gets by off of its movement, 40% whiff percentage. If the spin rate goes from like 2,300 to 2,200 here at altitude, if it's not going to be dropping the same way, he's going to have to throw more changeups. He's going to have to throw a lot of changeups to righties. And if that pitch is not perfect today, he's going to get murdered. And it's probably going to be a problem for a newbie. But hey, you know, DJ Hertz, it's a cheap price point, and it's a Rockies lineup that is not very good. I think we all understand that. We know the risk of playing it in Coors, but price is a massive thing here for DFS. And obviously the strikeout potential has been there early on for him.
If DJ Hertz starts came in a different order, he would not be chalky today because he's had 3 starts, like we were talking about before. And the last one, was a crush. He scored 43 fantasy points. His other 2 starts, he scored 11 and 1 fantasy point. If you just sandwich the 43 fantasy points in between the 1 and the 11, he's not popular today. If it was his first start of the season, he's also not popular today. So I think this is a really big overreaction to what he did last start. And yeah, I have some exposure to him as a punt option, but I prefer Trevor Rogers for the lower ownership. But something else here as well is that the Rockies kind of go under-owned on the other side because nobody is, or I should say, because everybody's looking to go play DJ Hurst for cheap. So there aren't other cheap pitchers I like, though, outside of Rogers, a little bit of Hurst, although I'm underweight to him.
Yeah, I'm underweight there. Rogers, we already talked through that at all. Do you have any other contrarian options that you have on this slate? Because I think that kind of rounds it out for pitching for us. Because for me, I do like the idea of getting to Andrew Abbott. What do you think Andrew Abbott's K-prop is today? I ask that a lot for people because I think it's a very applicable way of looking at upside potential.
I think he's had the same 5.5 prop in every single start this year. So I'm going to say 5.5.
He's had 5.5 just about every single time out. It's 5.5, and it's basically -110 both sides of things. It's slightly towards the under right now at the moment. It's kind of gone back and forth, but 5.5 even money on the over. Andrew Abbott, it's a freaky spot. It's 90 degrees. I'm going to talk about my favorite, contrarian stack here on today's slate. Coming up there next on the Cincinnati side, going up against Cutter Crawford. They're pulling, 6.7% ownership. Boston's really popular, the most popular team on the slate at 10.5%. If they're going to be the most popular team on the slate, I like looking at the other pitcher, especially if they have a 5.5 K prop attached to them. So for me, Andrew Abbott, just wanted to give him a shout out because he's pulling absolutely no ownership. It's freaky. It probably goes poorly, but if you're playing 150 lineups, I like being overweight there.
Anything else you want to add about the pitchers tonight?
Nope. How about you?
No, that pretty much covers where I'm at with everybody. Like, I think the ownership on the high end is pretty efficient. I'm mixing and matching some of the high end guys where I'm really different at pitching, which I don't have to really reiterate again, but Hur's underweight, overweight to Trevor Rogers. I think he's the best contrarian pitching option. There are not very many pitchers that are low owned today that I think have upside. Rogers is one of them.
Luis Camposano scratched for just to troll us. Just to troll us.
It's not fuck, it is on this slate. Dude,
Sure is.
Also, is this not like the 5th time Camposano's been scratched this year?
Dude, I'm so over how many scratches. This is by far the most scratches that we've seen in MLB since I've been doing this. Like I've been playing MLB DFS longer than I've played any other sport in DFS. I think it's like 2014 or 15 since I've been playing that. I cannot believe how many scratches we've had this season.
It's insane. It's ridiculous. It's never ending. The good thing is that we do have the late swap tool now for baseball, which it's funny. There was a point in time where we're like kind of talking about it internally. Like, there aren't that many late scratches in baseball. Is this something we should put time into developing? And ultimately we decided that yes, it was something we should do. And now there's just late scratches every single slate.
It's just absurd, dude.
They never, ever end. All right. If you don't want to look, so nothing else you want to talk about at pitching, let's go ahead and go back into Discord to see what other questions we had. There was one from Hey, I'm Drew. He wants to know what are the cash game plays for today. So we already talked about it at pitcher. Kirby and Cease, that's the direction Eric and I both feel comfortable with. And then at offense, I just say you probably want to load up on the Nationals today.
Yep, Nationals are the preferred spot. They're my highest owned stack, but that is not surprising to anybody.
All right, so we are on the same page there. Let me go double check to make sure there weren't any super chats that we missed out on. And nope, so we are all caught up. Jordan, let's build some lineups in the lineup generator. We'll see what we're getting to there. And while we're doing it, I'm going to rerun my lineups in the Sims because things have changed a little bit. All right, so Jordan, let's go balance lineups. It's a 10-game slate. There's no real pronounced chalk. I'm curious to see what we get to. This hat appears to be a mistake because it's very hot wearing it with this around my head. I'm sweating a lot, but I am
good. Good. I hope you suffer.
This is This is Eric is winning right now because I'm uncomfortable.
There's no winning in this game.
A lot of Cease. We do DJ Hirsch showing up in lineups. He's in about a third. First Sale is in a third of lineups, which, I know that that's a pretty decent amount of Rodon and Cease, but still, you see here, we're kind of spread out at pitcher. Like, you don't see often where we have this many pitchers that are in like 30+% of lineups. And we do on this slate. We've got 4 guys: Hirsch, Sale, Carlos Rodon, Dylan Cease. See what else if you scroll down, Jordan. Yeah, see, George Kirby's in a double-digit amount of lineups. But those are the 4 guys the lineup generator is really preferring to build lineups around. And then a ton of nationals as well. You see Joey Meneses, Luis Garcia. Nationals are about half of our lineups, which is, it's a good amount. It's not anything too insane. And even if you go back to those individual players that we're looking at there, while these are our most rostered hitters, it's not like these guys are showing up in 70, 80% of lineups like when Shohei Ohtani was at Coors Field. Meneses in 38% of lineups, Luis Garcia 38%, Lane Thomas 35%. Who is your most stacked offense, Eric?
Washington at the moment. Again, Coors, I'm underweight to Colorado, still even at like 6% ownership share. Maybe I do switch something up there if DJ Hirsch is going to be that popular. He continues to go up, but Dakota Hudson, I don't care that he's pulling 0 ownership. Give me the Washington Nationals. Pretty cheap for a Coors offense as well. We have seen DraftKings start to try to aggressively price up guys. Hi, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith. How are you? But CJ Abrams, 6.2K, Lane Thomas, 5.1K. Otherwise, everybody 4.6K or cheaper in that entire Washington lineup. You get Rosario, 4.3, Meneses, 3.9, Senzel, Garcia, I love there. Tons of him at 4.4K. And then you get a cheap catcher, maybe not as good as Kyber Ruiz from a hitting perspective, but a 2.7K pitcher at altitude is never going to piss me off. So 5.9 implied run total for the Washington Nationals. Hard not to like them in large field. In single entry, definitely won't be going that direction, but for large field, I've got them in 22% of lineups.
Yeah, so for me, I'm playing both sides of the Coors Field game. Not anything crazy aggressive, right around 20% of each side. My preferred side is the Nationals. For single entry, because hers, I think, could be popular there, I prefer the Rocky side, getting a little bit of leverage in single entry. So Coors Field, my 2 most stacked offenses on the slate, but nothing like totally crazy in terms of my ownership. I'm right around 20% each. If you're building one lineup for single entry, though, Eric, would you go to the Nationals, or is there a different direction you'd be looking in?
Yeah, so I would be looking at either Cincinnati, Boston. Again, this is a small ballpark with a ton of heat. 2 good pitchers in Cutter Crawford and Andrew Abbott on the mound. Neither of them really pulling ownership. They would pull ownership in a different ballpark today in these specific matchups, Cincinnati especially. I mean, come on, for Cutter Crawford, this is just like optimal kind of stuff. 26.3% K rate. Up against righties. That's 3rd best in baseball. But the main thing to point out is just how insane this weather is. And you have 2 pitchers who do give you some fly ball contact in Crawford and Abbott. And in single entry, I have a 5-3 that is these 2 ball clubs. Cutter Crawford, 17.6 degree average launch angle. Andrew Abbott, 21.3 degree average launch angle there. Both of them north of 29% fly ball rates. Wind blowing out. I mean, this could just play very small, and we could see absolute fireworks Boston Cincy. So for their current ownership, I think both offenses are pretty fun to get to.
Are there any other spots on the slate where you are really weighing the weather, either because of heat or wind or anything along those lines?
So I mean, those are the main ones. Obviously, I talked about for pick 6, which starts in 5 minutes for the people. Philadelphia is an absolute treasure trove, it would appear. We have the roof closed there in Texas, in Arlington and Houston. So the weather, the 90-degree weather you get in Texas there isn't really going to be factoring it in. Coors Field is good hitting environment. It's just a bad offense in Colorado out there, which is why hers is pulling ownership, when hers is cheap, of course. But it's 84, 85 degrees there with the wind blowing out currently, going to be around 82 at first pitch. Looking other places, LA sitting around 75, 80 at first pitch. That's an okay spot if you want to be firing up some Dodgers. But yeah, otherwise that's kind of the gist of it. How about you?
Yeah,
Cleveland
not
looks all
anything in
right.
particular, mostly because the way that the heat is so uniform everywhere that I feel like it kind of impacts a lot of the games across the slate. And it's in general, we're just going to see more offense in a lot of these games going forward.
Yep, and I'm excited for it. I'm very much looking forward to it. Breaking this slate down last night, that was kind of the main thing that stood out to me is like we're starting to get into those summer months. Cleveland, wind blowing in ever so slightly, but it's like what, 2 miles per hour, 3 miles per hour at the moment, and we are sitting there with 85% temperature, or sorry, 85-degree weather, 60% humidity. That seems pretty fun as well.
Right. Rerunning lineups for Camposano being scratched. I honestly probably didn't even have to do. I think I had your camera turned off, Eric. I think lineups with Camposano, I think I maybe had like one of them, but whatever, redoing everything anyway. Let's go and build some lineups for FanDuel now, Jordan. We'll see what we're getting on the FanDuel side of things and how that might differ from what we're getting to over on DraftKings. And same deal, go to balance lineups, and then we'll see what the exposures look like. How are you doing on your lineups there, Eric?
I'm all set. I haven't changed a lot from what I had earlier. Sometimes I'll tweak stuff. Well, actually, all the time I'll tweak stuff. I haven't really had to tweak that much. I feel really good about this slate and about my exposures now.
Yeah, I mean, I had to tweak stuff for the national starting lineup, and then I did that, and then Camposano got scratched. I figured I might as well run it again. I know it's easy to be lazy and not do it, but I felt like I should because I've got the time for it. So
well, because you're an adult and you are here to teach people how to play DFS, and I would think that teaching them is probably changing your lineups for new updated information.
Yep. So we have got that running in the background here, building another set of lineups in the contest generator. Then I'll be simming it. FanDuel lineups here, and it is more aggressively weighted towards the Washington Nationals. You'll see CJ Abrams, Lane Thomas, Eddie Rosario, Joey Meneses, Luis Garcia. So our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not just our most rostered hitters, but our 5 most rostered players over on FanDuel are all from the Washington Nationals. Our most rostered pitcher on FanDuel is Carlos Rodon. And I think we should hit on that as well, Eric. If you're building one FanDuel lineup right now, who would you go to on FanDuel tonight on a single pitcher site? Because that really opens up other doors there in terms of like really a lot of different ways you could build your lineups with the amount of viable pitchers.
George Kirby by far. When you're getting a bonus for 6 innings, when you're getting a bonus for a win, I don't see how you don't click on George Kirby at 9,800. I would say my second favorite. He's pulling 0.5% ownership. And in one lineup, I would be considering Trevor Rogers at 6,700. He's the cheapest viable option that we have on this slate. You've got Hers pulling like, what, 7% ownership at 7,900. I would be pulling the trigger on some Trevor Rogers. You get the Seattle matchup. You have a great ballpark. And you have strikeout upside that exists there. Yeah, 4.4 implied run total. But I think my options would be George Kirby 1. And then building out one lineup, I would certainly be looking at Trevor Rogers and getting to offense.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mean, Trevor Rogers, just like over on DraftKings, is not popular on FanDuel, less so even on FanDuel, still cheap there. So reasonable way to go. The lineup generator is like in Carlos Rodon. If you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, there's a link below in the YouTube description box. It's less than $15. We got player projections and ownership projections in here. It's going to build lineups that we project to be plus EV, and it also grants you access to our Discord channel. But Carlos Rodon, and let's see the other pitchers. Rodon, some Cease lineups there. What else? Oh, Patrick Sandoval. Didn't even think about Sandoval at all today. Some Chris Sale lineups.
I do not want to play Patrick Sandoval against the Dodgers. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, neither do I. That is not something high on my to-do list. But he's showing up in some lineups there.
Buying stupid fucking hats is, though. Tilting.
Anything else that stand out to you about the lineups that we've built?
Yeah, I would say Brady Singer, pulling a little bit of ownership there. Bobby Dahlbeck, looking at some of these guys down there at the bottom end on the FanDuel side of things. One pitcher side. How much Rodon did we get to when it was all said and done there?
Rerunning right now, I had 26% before.
Okay, and that's for FanDuel.
So the lineups on here are FanDuel lineups. But I'm saying for my DraftKings lineup,
got it.
26% of road.
Yeah, so he's pulling 33% ownership. That'd be a little bit heavy for me. You can go into the lineup generator there, maybe trim it down ever so slightly. I like getting to, I mean, Tyler O'Neill is my favorite home run play on the entire slate, on the main slate. I love getting to him as a one-off. I have a lot of him and Duran and Devers as like guys to just be overweight to. But then I'm trying to get away from playing Boston where they're just so popular over on DK. I think on FanDuel, a little bit more gettable.
Yeah, so let's talk about that ownership that is going to the Boston Red Sox. And we just talk about stacks more in general now. And yeah, they are going to be very popular today. We also have like kind of modest ownership on Coors Field. Jordan just pulled up the top stacks tool there. We've got 5% ownership to the Rockies, 10% to the Washington Nationals. The chalk offense on the slate, it is the Boston Red Sox pulling 11% ownership. What are you going to be doing with the Boston Red Sox, who are the chalk of the night?
I will be underweight to them. I've got 6% Boston right now, but I do have individual batters. I talked about that 5-3. I have a 5-man Cincinnati with 3 Boston Red Sox in single entry right now. I do think that game environment could be just steroids. And sometimes, you know, you might know after one pitch that things are going to look really, really good up there in Cincinnati tonight. And you could be looking at tons of solo shots on a site like DK where 14 points for that is just off the chain. I like attacking some of those home run guys. I will say Duran is not one of those 3 Boston guys for today, mainly because there's no power that he has or exhibited against lefties so far this season. Tons of stolen base upside. He has 19 stolen bases on the season, 6th best in baseball. He is up to, in Cincinnati, the #1 team to target for stolen bases, 107 stolen bases that they've given up on the season. So I think he's still a good option to have in your stacks, but he is somebody that when I'm playing like 3 individual batters and looking for one-off home run type options, he did not make the cut.
I'm hoping this should be my final run of Sims going
Me
right now.
too, until
exactly
somebody gets
exposures
scratched.
are. Yeah. I do know that I was underweight to the field on the Red Sox before. I assume that is still going to be the case when everything updates, but I'll know a little bit better like 10, 15 seconds from now. And here it is. All right. So let me favorite my top 150 lineups. And what is my Red Sox exposure? So yeah, I have 4% of the Boston Red Sox.
Oh boy. Yep, we're both a little bit underweight, and that's going to be fun.
Which, I mean, it's not something I have an issue with. Also, I mean, you see it pretty frequently where our top stacks tool will be in alignment with the Sims. And it's not that we have the Red Sox projected poorly today. We have them with the 3rd highest top stack odds on the slate. The problem, though, is that while they do have the 3rd highest top stack odds, their top stack odds are like half of what their ownership is.
Correct.
So just an over-owned team. I'm going to be looking to go a little bit elsewhere.
I still like Connor Wong. I still like Tyler O'Neill. I still like Rafael Devers for what it's worth. And Romy Gonzalez, somebody I have quite a bit of too.
What other offenses are priorities for you today? We've talked about Coors Field. Well, actually, before we get past this, because I'm on the Rockies, I know you had said you slightly prefer the DJ Hers side. So what are you going to do with your exposure to the Rockies? Is it a team that you're overweight to, underweight to? Because they weren't popular. They're only pulling 5% ownership.
Yeah, if I were going to do anything, if I were going to change anything about my exposures right now, I think I might trim down a little bit more Cincinnati, because Cincinnati is a team that I have a ton of, and it's a tough spot against Crawford, but it's an amazing game environment in an amazing ballpark. I might add a little bit more Colorado to the portfolio now that we're talking through it. But I am a big fan of getting to Atlanta Braves today, just as pure leverage against Rodon. It's a great ballpark, obviously, and it's a little bit wild to see both of these guys sitting with like 3.8 implied run totals, 3.7, pulling tons of ownership, and yet Atlanta being a team that I want to get to, but I mean, it's freaky. Atlanta's that kind of team where a 164 ISO, I mean, that's sitting there top 10 in baseball right now, and there's room for that to grow based on what we saw in 2023. Obviously, there's no Acuna, but that's going to make somebody else in the lineup really cheap and more accessible. So it's kind of like back and forth with Atlanta as being like my primary leverage stack on today's slate.
Yeah, and I mean, that relates to a question that we got in Discord here for Einsteinium. Einsteinium wanted to know, do we have any interest in the Braves or the Yankees? And it's hard to not have some amount of interest in them just from this standpoint. They're very good offenses. They're going up against very good pitchers as well, but those pitchers are really popular, and you just don't typically see chalk starting pitchers against the New York Yankees or the Atlanta Braves. So I think both of them do make sense as leverage stacks.
Yep, they definitely do.
Okay, let me see. What do I have now for exposure to those teams? And yeah, couple stacks. It's not like these are teams I'm playing 10% of, but yeah, as like teams to have some exposure to, I think they make sense.
I have 9% of Atlanta right now.
Okay. Yes, that's a pretty big stand.
I feel really good about it too. I mean, this is Carlos Rodon has looked so much better, but at the same time, I think that when you're talking about somebody pulling the most ownership at the pitcher position that has had as much blow up risk as what he's had, not just this season. I mean, last season, the last 2.5 years, basically for Carlos Rodon, he's been so much more targetable than the name might lead you to recognize from his White Sox San Francisco days. I mean, he has definitely been attackable varieties. Now he's identical expected ISOs on both sides and getting to just the potential blow up risk, which everybody has facing an offense like Atlanta. I guess what is it? 209 expected ISO against righties for Carlos Rodon, specifically some of those righties. It is a little bit freaky for me.
Any individual hitters from the Braves then that do make the most sense to you, even if somebody was just hand building a lineup or two and maybe doesn't have Carlos Rodon looking for leverage? Who are you prioritizing from the Braves?
Yeah, there's a couple of massive bats to be getting to. Marcell Ozuna's had the best year of any Brave. He's 6.1K. If you're going to get to Trevor Rogers, I think there's a correlation in trying to get to some Marcell Ozuna in your life. Austin Riley, we know he can be a lefty killer for sure. Sean Murphy, great catching option. He's down to 3.3K. Remember playing Sean Murphy at frickin' 5K every single slate last season? I do. You probably do. It definitely was a thing that happened, and all of a sudden, we're getting him at 3.3K against a lefty, and he's still got a 210 expected ISO against them on the season. Adam Duvall is a 354 expected ISO against lefties. I mean, these are guys that I just want to be overweight to. And Laureano, now that he's a part of that ball club as well, this is just a spot. I think it's really hard not to have a lot of interest in those righties, just as from a pure leverage perspective. But then the upside, because it's Atlanta, is just immense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a whole bunch of sense. And we got a couple of super chats here to answer as well. We got one from Riley Schaffer. He says, just got here. What's with the hat? Just mail order, overnighted it. It's a replica from the Indiana Jones movie.
I hate you so much.
What? What's wrong with liking movies?
Keep talking. Movies? Just go ahead.
You don't have any like memorabilia for movies or anything around your house?
I do have the replica. I have the identical hat from Indiana Jones, which is the thing that pisses me off about this bit the most, is it's literally in that freaking room and I could go get it. You want me to go get it?
Yeah, what? You're going to go there and you're going to find out that it might not be there because I might have stolen it.
Hold, please.
All right. Why do you have to turn his camera off? What's going to happen with the what does he not want us to see? Oh my God. This guy is coming in here, trying to ruin fun. Ryan Rennebaum left a super chat. It's just a thumbs up. There's no question there. Ryan, did you have a question for us? Let me see. Ryan, if you have a question, you could throw it into, it says, can you run FanDuel lineups? In the lineup generator we were asking for, or in the Sims? Because we did run lineups for the lineup generator before. But Jordan, run some lineups in the Sims as well for Ryan here, if you wouldn't mind. That's a fake hat, dude. It's not really. Yeah, I know. Anybody could write anything that they want. Yeah, I get it. I get it. You made a tag for it and you put it in there. Nobody's going to believe that. That is not the hat that Han Solo wore in Indiana Jones.
I hate you.
And now it's broken. Now you broke the hat.
Thank you so much.
You broke your hat.
Thanks.
You probably got that for cheap. I mean, like a fake knockoff like that. How many pesos did you pay for it? Nobody
What's
could
it
hear
like
you,
being the
which is
most
good.
annoying person in the entire world? What's it like?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
I legitimately have the hat, and you're just sitting here with the worst bid of all time. It's okay. Yep. Oh, it does say it. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
bad.
yeah. Right in there. It says solar eclipse. No, solar escape, gender neutral. And then it says what it's made of, and it says not to put it in the wash. Just so you know.
Mac just said Greg's lots of better than arrows, and then Eric's. Thanks, Emac. You would like that because he looks like he's part of a fucking barbershop quartet.
Oh, maybe that's a hat I should get next. And many more. Yeah,
literally, I think I finally nailed what I've been trying to say.
I know which hat I'm getting next. I know which hat I'm getting next. Gives me an idea.
I don't want to be here anymore.
We've got lineups running for FanDuel on the screen right now for Ryan Rennebaum. Are there any other stacks that are important to you for tonight, Eric?
I have some Dodgers. I've got a little bit of Toronto. I've got Toronto's one we haven't talked about going up against Carrasco. He sucks, doesn't he? Like Carlos Carrasco sucks. Like I'm not wrong about that.
I bet him under 3.5 strikeouts.
So yeah, no, he sucks. So we should probably have some Toronto in a good hitting environment, shouldn't we?
Let me see. Do I have exposure to? I think I have some exposure to Toronto. Yeah, last run just updated. Toronto's my third most owned team. So of all the teams that are not at Coors Field, the Blue Jays are the one that I have the most of.
There you go. Feel good about that.
So Blue Jays for me. If I'm gonna talk about one other team as well, that's somewhat important to my lineup builds. We've got the Baltimore Orioles in Houston. Jake Bloss is pitching for the Astros. And you never know what you're getting out of young pitchers when they're first getting called up to the big leagues. This is going to be the major league debut of Jack Bloss, 22 years old. If we go and we look at some of his background as a pitching prospect, he is highly rated and he has pitched fairly well in the minor leagues over the course of his career. If there's one thing, though, that I do kind of notice that does make you a little bit concerned about him, his strikeout rate has not been as high in Double-A, not even close as high in Double-A as it was at the lower levels of the minor leagues. He only has a 21% strikeout rate in Double-A. If he's going to be allowing the ball to be put in play against him at the major league level, that could potentially be an issue for him. And it's also obviously a really, really difficult matchup. So Baltimore Orioles with kind of modest ownership against Jake Bloss, that's another team that I'm interested in.
I'm right there with you. I have no problem whatsoever firing that out. Baltimore, I mean, don't they have a 4-point floor, 4.5 implied run total?
I don't know exactly what the run total is. I can tell you what it is in our top stacks tool.
That's what I want to see.
It's just based.
It's a little bit different.
Our Sims have 4.9 for them.
4.9. Okay, so a little bit higher on our end, which is nice. I think they had by Sportsbook match. Oh, 4.8. Yeah, no, exactly. So, yeah, Baltimore. They're an expensive offense. You get to Gunnar, you get to Adley. I mean, we just saw what they did against Mr. Heel. That is still so painful for me, but very much in line with Baltimore being a nice contrarian offense as well.
We have a super chat. I like this one. This is from Freudian Slip. He says, this wouldn't be the show I know and love without the exotic bat of the day.
Oh,
well, I'll tell you this, in baseball, you got a lot more exotics to choose from than over in the NBA side of things, just the athleticism difference and what's required. But Freudian Slip wants to know, who is the exotic bat of the day? That is Sam Bouchard for me, Eric. You got like 80% of the players.
Probably Tyler O'Neill for me.
Tyler O'Neill?
Yeah, Tyler O'Neill's going to hit a ball very high and very far against Mr. Andrew Abbott and the inferno that is Cincinnati today.
Okay. I think that is a fine choice as well. Freudian Slip, thank you very much for the super chat. We do appreciate it. Let me make sure that there were no other questions asked. Oh, here's one. Nick Thompson says, Han Jones can run the Temple of Doom in 12 parsecs.
That's what I heard.
I've heard that as well.
That's a combining of quotes. That's wild. Look what he did there. Look what
the absolute fastest person I know that was my mom. like lightning. You've never seen a lady run faster. Einstein, he wants to know, how do we feel about the Guardians today? Is that a team you have any exposure to?
A little bit. I bet them. They had really, really nice numbers. I don't know how this happens nonstop, but like if you just bet Stephen Kwan over total bases, if you bet Josh Naylor over total bases, and you bet Jose Ramirez to walk, you win pretty much every day. Go figure.
All right. All right. So we got Guardians. Anything else you want to add before we do our home run picks?
Nope. I would like to go to the home run picks and get out of here.
All right. Eric, you apparently have big plans today because you're in a hurry to get out of here. So, Eric,
I have literally no plans but watching baseball and trying to make money in the premium Discord if everybody wants to come hang out there. And then going to be betting some Copa America too, because that seems fun.
Who are you picking homer, though?
Tyler O'Neill. I feel like that's pretty chalky. So I'm going to get a little bit different for you, boy. Let's get wild with Trevor Larnach. So we didn't talk about the evening slate. Mainly, we never talk about the evening slate, but I think this is a fun one when you're talking about 3 games: Brewers, Padres, Twins, Oakland, and then Angels, Dodgers. I think it's pretty safe to say that the Dodgers will be the chalk of that one. But the my Twins pulling a 4.5 implied run total, and Trevor Larnach, he is a power bat, and I don't think he gets a lot of respect. He's going up against Joey Estes, who has a 277 expected ISO against lefties. The wind's blowing out. It's obviously muted there in Oakland, but Larnach pulling a 223 expected ISO. Bet it, play it in DFS, win money.
Let me see. Which direction do I want to go here? Huh. All right. No, maybe.
Maybe.
No.
Huh?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So somebody we just kind of briefly touched on, the Toronto Blue Jays, a stack that you said that you liked, Eric. And then I also am overweight to the field too. Give me Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who I swear, I think I've picked Vlad as a home run pick probably 20 times over the last year. So I don't think he's ever come through. Today's going to be the day, though. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he is going to homer for us tonight. From chat, Porzingis has got Ozzy Albies. Sotek's going with JJ Bleday. We got some weird home run picks in here. Joey Hopper, Fido. All right, it's time for the weekend if these are the home run picks. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Jordan Klein and Shohei Ohtani to homer today. See you back here Monday.